And we are joined now by former NATO Supreme Allied Commander Admiral James Stavridis. He also served more than 3 years as the head of U.S. Southern Command and is now vice chairman of the investment firm, the Carlyle Group. Good to see you on this Saturday. Thanks for being here. We have talked, you and I, before about these strikes, and you have made the point that intelligence could be gathered if these boats were intercepted instead of immediately blown up. What do you take away from the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth's defense, that these are intended to be lethal strikes, that that's what they think is, in their mind, the biggest point of all of this?
Even if these are intended to be lethal strikes, once you conduct that first strike and now your enemies are knocked out of action, think of a pilot parachuting down after an aircraft is shot down. Think of a soldier on the ground who's knocked unconscious by a concussion. Think in this case of a couple of alleged drug runners now floating around in the water. To go in and kill them at that point deliberately, if all that is factually correct, is very troubling in two ways. One, the laws of war are such that when an opponent is knocked out like that, it's incumbent upon you to capture them. And then secondly, the point you made a moment ago, Jessica, and the one you and I have talked about repeatedly, why not capture them and get the intelligence, interrogate them, and, oh, by the way, prosecute them for the crime of drug running. But you lose that intelligence. Final thought here, I saw a statement from the Senate Armed Services Committee, which is the senior committee in Congress that oversees the armed forces, joint bipartisan statement from the co-chairs, Senator Roger Wicker and Senator Jack Reed, both of them veterans. Jack Reed, an Army officer, former West Point graduate. The Senator Wicker is a former JAG officer in the United States Air Force. They intend to conduct vigorous oversight. I suspect they'll be looking at this one closely.
And so as all of these strikes are happening, we do look to Venezuela as well. Trump, the president, saying that airlines should consider the airspace over Venezuela closed. Last Saturday, major airlines canceled flights from Venezuela after an FAA warning. What do you think we should read into this?
We should read into it that strikes are very probably going to occur over the course of this week. If you think back to the Middle East, you and I were discussing that a few months ago. The airspace over Israel and parts of the Middle East was repeatedly closed, not only by the sovereign states there, but also from warnings from the U.S. and other entities. Same situation here. The fact that the president is, in my view, in this case, if he's going to launch airstrikes, I think it's a responsibility on the part of the U.S. to let commercial aircraft, Venezuelan aircraft, know that strikes are coming. So these could be Tomahawk missiles, these could be drones, these could be Marine helicopters bringing Marines ashore. All of that creates a lot of complications in the skies over Venezuela. So when you hear the president of the United States throw that warning out there, to me it sounds like strikes are coming, probably sooner rather than later.
And you went through some of the things you think it could be, but let's talk a little bit about that in more detail. I mean, what should we, if that does happen, what do you think is smart to anticipate?
Let's start with a set of options that were probably presented to the president. They run from going after drug labs ashore, but using unmanned aircraft. Again, Tomahawk missiles, drones to go after them. Next level up would be to go after transportation hubs, again, using drones and Tomahawks, but then perhaps adding, Jessica, strike fighter aircraft like those Joint Strike Fighters you showed a moment ago, or the 80 combat aircraft that are on the USS Gerald R. Ford. Next up would be going after leadership targets, Venezuelan military targets, their air defenses, their small Navy. They have about 30 ships or so. Their small Air Force, about 40 aircraft. You could take those out. And then at the very high end of the risk spectrum would be actually putting U.S. Marines ashore, presumably to go after these drug sites, go after the targets I mentioned, military ones, perhaps go after, track down, find, capture Maduro. Those are all options. They all have different levels of risk. I suspect the president is wrestling with all of those. Final thought here, land operations, boots on the ground, very dangerous, not a good idea in my view, because of the complications, the size of Venezuela, twice the size of California. If the president is intent upon escalation here, I think he'll probably end up with the kind of airstrikes I talked about a moment ago.
And when it comes to land strikes, do you believe the administration currently has legal approval and is legally within its bounds for these land strikes?
They think they do. They've articulated this pretty clearly. They believe that the act of transshipping drugs to the United States from Venezuela, in their view, by these drug cartels, is an act of war, and it justifies combat operations both on the high seas, which we've been watching now across the last month or so, but the next level of operation will be to take it ashore. Again, at some point, the Congress is probably going to have a vote on this, if you will, supporting these operations or not. But certainly the administration has been consistent in its view that these kind of operations, the drug running, constitute acts of war. They're going to respond with combat and lethal force.
Yeah. And just lastly, again, we've been talking about potential action in Venezuela for several weeks now. We've seen this buildup of our military assets in that region. I'm curious if your assessment has changed at all in terms of the administration's end game here.
It has not. I have felt consistently from the very start of the attacks on the small drug boats that the size of the forces that are now deployed, these are at least a dozen big U.S. Navy warships, dozens of combat aircraft, dozens of attack helicopters, thousands of Marines, thousands of sailors. That's a big force. It's too big to be doing simply the counter-narcotics. It is about regime change. I think the president would like to do it the easy way, meaning get Maduro to step down. Reportedly, they've had some conversations. Let's hope that's the case and escalation can be avoided. I think President Trump is ready to launch strikes as the next step in trying to convince Maduro, take the deal, get out. You can get a dacha outside of Moscow, get a hacienda outside of Havana. Get out of there while you can. Let's hope Maduro is listening.
We shall see. Admiral James Stavridis, thanks so much. We appreciate it.